introvert is now joining the speakers here. So bear with me. I can walk, but I like to cook because I'm hot. And so my lecture is a little bit different because I wanted to talk to you, and I was asked by the people I used to be down in the back, my gator, oh, I see you still on. And it was nice that we had a gator at the very beginning too, you know, thinking of the world. So this really isn't a talk about women doctors per se, because you've heard about that, you hear about that all the time. But really about medical education and the contribution that women have made and where we're going to go in academic medicine, because we really need to do some more. Or okay. Can you do that? We went too far. One too far. Go back. Yes. Okay. So we talked at the very beginning about Elizabeth Blackwell. And I know most of you know her. There's even, I kind of like the other way. That was kind of fun. Elizabeth Blackwell. I grew up in Rochester, New York, so Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Blackwell were kind of who I cut my teeth on as a young girl, trying to figure out who were people I should look up to. So Elizabeth Blackwell was born in 1821. She was the first woman, as you heard, to receive a medical degree in the United States. On the top there is a copy picture of her diploma. Very soon after she graduated, they closed that medical school to the women. There you go. But she didn't give up. She didn't just practice medicine. She was a pioneer in medical education. And what I really want to show you today is that what she did is what we're still doing today. It's now. She is really brilliant. Well, I do want to say one other thing. I was not a history major. I am not a historian. For those of you who are historians, I apologize. This is a biochemist pediatrician view. And I got to let you care wrong. There we go. First, I want to just go on a little bit of data, which I think is really important because, as our last speaker said, most of us in the room are very data-driven. This data is from the American Association of Medical Colleges, the AAMC. So I want to highlight some of this data. At the very top, you see 47% of our students are women. What do you think of that? What's the percentage of women in the population? We're not there yet, are we? It's really kind of interesting. So I went to medical school, and I will date myself. I have a good hair colorist. In 1981, 30% of my class were women. That seemed pretty good at the time. So in 30 years, we've come up to here. Actually 35, I know what my third in poetry English. So, 47%. We went up fast, and then we stabilized. It's not a good stable number. We need to get up a little bit more. But what I really want to show you is the second arrow. Look at that. 47% of the students are women, but only 15% of the department shares are women. Only 33% of our senior leadership in medical schools are women, and only 16% of our deans. So what happened? We all went, woo-hoo! Women are in medical school, they're taking over. Some schools actually look at more than 50%, and then boom, there's this premature closure of gender equality. And that's what I want you to kind of think about as we go through this. So my history that I'm going to go over is really, and I apologize for those who are osteopaths in the room, is going to be an allopathic dominance, which is what medical education really has had that dominance. Definitely had a male dominance. And we're going to talk about what women bring to academic medicine, because it's really tied closely to how we practice today. So here's some history. So as you know, in the 19th century, you probably know, most medicine was learned by apprenticeship, you hung out with another doctor, or by reading texts. Oh, I didn't know I did cool things, so thank you. All right, so prior to the 20th century, medical education was very varied. Some of the quality was good, a lot was bad. A lot of it was for profit. again, it looks like that may be coming back too. Curriculum was not standardized. You go somewhere with Dr. Schmo, you did something, and Dr. Schmoo, you did something else. And there weren't many women. I'm really going to have to. So 1910, jumping around a lot of them, because this is really important. Flexner was not a physician, and he came out with a Flexner report. Okay, and the Flexner report was really key. 1910. When did I tell you I went to medical school? 1981. I did 2 years of basic science, 2 years of clinical medicine. 71 years later, they were doing the same thing. Fascinating. But he also said that women should be part of the education of physicians. Kind of buried in his report. He did say. Thank you. You're getting my clues here. So, going back then, before his report, many schools for women were open in the Northeast. In 1863, Elizabeth Blackwell, remember, first woman, her school closed. She realized coeducation wasn't going to happen. She said, I want to, oops, one back. She said, She said, I want to start a women's school. And if you look at this, at the bottom there, you see attending physicians, Elizabeth Blackwell and Emily Blackwell, her sister. She wanted to start a women's school because women were not getting educated. Schools that accepted them decided it was a failure. So the only way to do this was to go forward. But she also wanted to do it a little different than what was happening. By 1870, about the time she was thinking about this, there were 525 American trained doctors. More than the entire world. Wow. 137 of them came from regular medical schools. That meant that most of them were from women's schools. So she wanted to improve education. So this picture from 1870 from Frank Leslie, some may know him, well, not personally. But what it shows is the confidence of a female physician caring for a patient. Pretty cool. Go ahead. So, there she was again. She wasn't the only one. I'm concentrating on her. But the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania, big history, 1850. Ann Preston was in that first class. She graduated, but didn't have much clinical experience. They allowed the women to learn in the classroom, but not have clinical experience. So she just started the Women's Hospital of Philadelphia, and that was to provide training for women. And she became the first woman dean, 1860s. And what percent of women deans did I tell you earlier? 15%. We have not come a long way, baby. Then in 1862, the New England Hospital for Women and Children was started. Why women and children? Because we weren't allowed to take care of men. So what did Elizabeth Blackwell know? She had this in the background, Boston, these places were happening, Philadelphia. So in New York, she wanted to do something. So she said, well, how am I going to go about this? So into some of the primary stuff. I find this as a medical educator really cool. So she went back and she said, I want to do what they do in England, which is this practical education. So you look at the arrow. She says, the hospital is the central school, the foundation of medical education. College lectures should be attached to and grow out of hospital practice, and not be, as at present, an independent and principal establishment. Whoa, I feel like I talked about that 15 years ago. You need to get the students to the bedside. Amazing. We're not very original. As I said, though, women weren't really, they were allowed to read books in some places. What we really needed was a large women's hospital to be a center for all women who wished to pursue medical education. Her hospital had 10 inpatient beds. That was it. That's what she started. Go ahead. Then, she also said, well, you know what? If we're going to do medical education, I thought this was a brilliant new idea of women with 10. We need to do assessment. Assessment, right, the curriculum. So she said, each pupil should be carefully examined
not only in all essential theoretical points in the lecture room where professors study, but in the still more vital subjects that can only be tested in the hospital by the sick bed, in the surgical and anatomic rooms by manipulation and demonstrations, and in the laboratory by familiarity with medicines. Examinations, those horrible tests we have to take, in diagnosis, in the practical applications of every branch of medicine, are essential to judge of the qualifications of a physician. Wow. Remember that Flexner report? 2 years of basic science, 2 years of clinical. She told us that we should be doing this in 1860. In the 1980s, I didn't see a bedside patient for the first 2 years of medical school. She was way ahead. And then, here was an idea we all thought was new. It was all over academic medicine. This is what we were going to teach in 2015, 2016. Small group. Students attending the hospital will be divided into small classes for practical instruction and will serve by turn in each department among the outpatients and in the maternity chair. These classes will be small, so as to keep them completely under the supervision of the professor, to enable him, unfortunately it was all him then, to acquire full acquaintance with the ability and needs of each individual student, and to allow the latter to obtain that special aid of which the want is so much felt by the students. Ha! This one was brilliant. So, you're going to have to do, we talk about application of knowledge. Again, I'm sorry, I feel like we're separating on this, but this is so key and important. Who we were and who we're becoming. She, the student, must be taught how to practice medicine and the care of the sick under supervision. Of course, I include in the term medicine the prevention of disease. The knowledge and application of hygienic law is essential to the education of a physician. This, then, is the second important change needed in our college system for women. Individual discipline and instruction in practical medicine. Now, again, this is really getting at the fact, as I mentioned, that women were not allowed to take care of patients. You could read all the books you want, you couldn't talk. Go ahead. And probably not just at the University of Florida, professionalism is often thought of as almost a dirty 4-letter word, even though it's many letters more than that now. You hear it all the time. Because it is who we are, we're different. If they talked about it then, this is what she said. The third point is the attitude assumed towards the profession. Courtesy and kindly feeling are due to the old and time-honored profession by those newcomers who are still walking with the uncertain steps of an experience. Pretty cool. But you can't make a new medical school without money. We need such an endowment as will enable us to secure the assistance of first-rate professors and to commence such a system of education as I have described, thorough and practical in its character. It is also necessary that such a body of ladies as well as gentlemen should join with the trustees of the infirmary as corporators of the college, as will assure the public and the profession that this effort possesses the sympathy and support of the women of New York. She can get in front of a ballroom and get money out of something, but you don't turn. Go ahead. I really like this because I write a lot of letters of recommendation. Some people write good letters, some people not so good. This is probably in the minute. But you can see, dear Miss Blackwell, not even Dr. Blackwell, I do think that you have assumed a position for which you are excellently qualified, and where you may, as a teacher, do a great many good. She had to use what she could get. Go ahead. So, we're talking about gender equity, but the whole movement of women's rights was occurring at a time that brought up attention about racial and ethnic equity too. These 3 women graduated from the Women's College of Pennsylvania. Look at the diversity here. A woman from India, a woman from Japan, and a woman from Syria. And this is 1885. Pretty cool. I couldn't find a photo, or really even a picture, of delineation of the first African American woman. Does anyone know where she graduated from? Or any graduates from Boston University? So Boston University, the first African American woman, Rebecca Davis Lee Crumpler, was in 1864. So hooray for BU. So, why did medical education change? Why is it important that we know what women did and what we can do? Well, these are Dr. Blackwell's goals. Women and children to be treated by women's physicians, because if you're not going to let us treat anybody, let us at least treat women and children. We'll give clinical instruction for women medical students, and we'll train nurses. They're females under women's supervision. Great goals, all good. The need really decreased with women's medical school coeducation. Go ahead. I love this one. You heard? I'm sure you didn't remember. I went to Princeton, so I have to go little digs to Boston, Harvard. This is by a Boston physician, and these are the things he said, which I thought were pretty great. Every adult, not every man, every adult has the right to instruction. Gender has nothing to do with this right. And women are doing it already. But they're not going to as good a schools as we are, i.e. Harvard. So he put out this in the early 1900s to see if he could convince Harvard to go coeducation. Go ahead. So what is the effect, or was the effect, of a female presence back then? Well, again, you weren't allowed to operate very much then if you're a female. So what did you do? You did what you could. So women were very involved in public health, access to care, and they did a lot of research, specifically on things affecting women and children. They did things with the diversity of physician workforce, and specifically not just gender. So here's another double AMC. I'm going to flip around here just a little bit to give you some data. So let's step back. Look at this. This is actually, how are we doing since Dr. Blackwell's time? So, faculty hires are up. That's fantastic. But if you look at that, look at the churn. They come in, they go out. That is not good. Very bad. Good news is there's been an increase in full professors. Woohoo! Look at that. 21%. That's pretty good. So we need to know what we want and how it makes us hungry to get there. Okay? But there's a lot of opportunity for each of you to get there. Go ahead. So, I wanted to go through some more recent medical educators. And some of these people may be here. So, OSCE, Observed Structural Clinical Exam. Dr. Paula Stillman, pediatric faculty member, University of Arizona, a woman. Pretty darn cool. The MDME, maybe not all of us like it, National Board of Medical Examiners, but computer-based training and testing, self-assessment, and standardized testing all started with Dr. Edith Levitt, who was the first woman president and CEO of the MDME. Pretty cool. Those are huge changes in medical education, and women led that way. More revolutionary ideas. The role of literature in medicine. An idea to help that reflection will improve empathy in the doctor-patient relationship. Dr. Rita Sharon at Columbia has really led that charge and gotten it throughout many, many medical schools across the country. Bates. So I was telling my spouse about this, and he goes, Bates is a woman. Yes, Bates is a woman. So Barbara Bates from the University of Rochester developed the Guide to Physical Examination History Taking. What I found as I was doing this, I thought was really funny. Look at this. Look what she used as her template, is the ornithology test, which is, if you take one out, you pull it up to Bates, you're like, my goodness, it really does make sense. She's got pictures, you got descriptions, it's fantastic. Brilliant. Okay. Dr. Bates, when I was at the University of Rochester through my chief residency, and worked there a year, and I never met her. What a shame, because she did so much for medicine. She developed some of the first interprofessional care thoughts. She started a nurse practitioner program. Wow, amazing. Keep going. Research. Women have always been involved in research. You saw pictures of Marie Curie. A couple other ones I want to highlight. Some you'll know, some you won't. Florence Sabin discovered the origin and processes of the lymphatic system and worked on tuberculosis. She was the first full professor, female full professor at Hopkins in 1917. So they've done a lot. First woman to be elected to the National Academy of Sciences in 1925. Virginia APGAR developed a standardized system to evaluate newborns. Not till 1949 did Columbia have their first female full professor. Next slide. Mary Ellen Avery, first woman physician chief at Children's Boston, 1974, 1985. Seems like a big deal until you skip to the third line on there, because it was back in 1959 that she discovered surfactant, which is a lack of, which is cause of respiratory distress syndrome. So it took them 20 years to recognize her professionally within the institution and make her both a full professor and then physician chief. That's pretty sad. Nancy Dickey, first woman president of the AMA. We celebrated when it happened, but look at the year, 1997. It's not that long ago. And she was also the first woman president of Texas A&M Health Science Center, and was a family doctor. Next slide. First woman dean, I mentioned before, Ann Preston in the 1860s. We have founding deans, Deborah German, University of Central Florida, Cinda Ann Johnson, and Virginia Tech. And just last 2 weeks ago, Anita Stanton is going to be the founding dean at the Seton Hall School in Hackensack. So women are really starting medical schools just like Elizabeth Blackwell. Go ahead. So, Elizabeth Blackwell's goal, increase representation of women in academic medicine, improve the health care for all, men and women, through research, clinical care, and administration. So I want to show you a couple more data points, because I think they're really important. So a lot of successes that really influence where we're going with medical education, they really influence how I teach and assess and administer in my roles. But this is where we are today. So you look at full-time practitioners in medical schools. It's up 8 points, 38%. But look how many more men there are. Look at part-time. It's about the same, men and women, 45 versus 55. But the reason that women are part-time is to take care of dependent children usually, while men are part-time because they're running other things. So they're part-time and then they're the president of some organization. So it's a very different reason. If you look again at full-time faculty before, there really has been an increase. I want you to also look at the other side, the full-time faculty distribution by rank and gender. Men make up 62% of full-time faculty, while women make up 38%. Don't forget that number. We have got to get that to change. Having 50% of women in medical school is not enough. I have to do a better job mentoring so we get rid of this day in medical education. So, what about the pipeline? Yeah. So we celebrate the progress, right? But if you look at it, the number of women in academic medicine has really stayed pretty flat, and that isn't very good. The top circle shows women while the comparison male figures at the bottom. That whole thing I want you to pay attention is the full professor. I was so excited to get a full professor. Woo, that was really good. But I really am still in a minority, and I didn't realize. I think the numbers here reflect what is going on here in the University of Florida. Go ahead. Surprised. Where are women in academics? Didn't surprise me. Internal medicine, okay? It's a big department. Pediatrics, of course. Psychiatry. I thought that was a little interesting. I thought OBGYN would be above it yet. And then surgery, again, with numbers. Basic science is pretty pitiful, as is, of course, surgery. So having a friend, AMWA, who's going to be an orthopedic surgeon is a big deal, because that visibility is really important. Next slide. Look at this. All right, there are 2 ways of looking at this. And the first time I looked at this, I was just like, big sigh and depressed. This is looking at permanent leadership positions, from division chief all the way on my side, all the way to dean. Okay? Look at those numbers. We're really staying pretty flat. Okay? But maybe it's a real chance of opportunity. But again, if I'm a young woman, either in medical school or junior faculty, how do I look at this data? Do I look at this data and say, I'm never going to be dean of a medical school? Then come out of medical school saying, I want to be a dean. I want want to be a chair. I want to do this. Women tend not to do that. And this is contributing to it. So we need to change this data. So I would say look at it as an opportunity to be the people who are still trailblazers. I never felt like I was a trailblazer. But I look at this data, I go, oh! Talk about power, it's all about power. So where do we go from here? Leadership is really, really important, okay? It can't be underestimated. You've got to take advantage of things like this with professional development, both in educational leadership, clinical leadership roles, research leadership roles. Sounds like a broken record here, but each one of these things, there are opportunities for advancement and learning how to lead. You've got to learn how to be coached and how to coach, to be mentored and how to be mentored. We've got to understand bias, both conscious and unconscious, for our search committees and for our P&T committees. Anecdotally, you don't want to be, I never thought of myself as someone who would stay in a room full of my department, as I did 2 years ago when looking for the chair. And they put up these people, and I said, are you kidding me? You couldn't find one person of color or one woman? And what do you know, they found someone, It's just like, come on. So we need this. Of course, we still hired the white man, but it's a beginning. We need this. It's really, really important. So how do we do it? I need it, you need it. We need feedback on our performance. I don't want to hear how I heard you do today. No, okay. But regular feedback on performance. You need to know what the promotion requirements are. I work with a bunch of junior faculty in my clinic. They don't have any idea what it means to go from instructor to assistant, and no clue what assistant to associate. They are cogs in the wheel, but they're working in an academic medical center. They need to know that. They need to have well-defined roles and linkages to the mission. What is my role in medical school? We need a culture that cultivates and celebrates diversity, regardless of who we are, gender, race, or sexual orientation. And given that data I showed you, we definitely need to work on environments for retention. There have got to be more opportunities for advancement, and we've got to understand where your institution is and how it compares with others. All these things are really, really important for each of us moving forward. So, how do you do this? I want you to go, all the young medical students, to go into academic medicine. You got to network. Oh, looks like a room full of networking. You got to mentor other women. You got to find a mentor. You got to include men in the conversation. They are there. And these are some of the resources. Obviously, AMWA. I'll put in a plug with some of the things I've also done. The AAMC actually has some good developmental things, and so does ELAM.